So if you're running a business that operates, beyond your own borders, doesn't matter if you're a small e-commerce shop or a global hotel chain, you are absolutely drowning in feedback.
You really are. I mean, literally.
And that's the problem, right? You've got customers, users, guests all over the world, and they're giving you this incredibly vital intelligence. But if your analytics team only speaks English, a huge chunk of that intelligence is, well, it's locked away. It's just sitting there in Spanish, French, German, and your data scientists just can't process it, not at that scale.
It's the silent killer of global strategy. I mean, we're diving into some material today that outlines this exact problem. There's this case study of a hospitality group, Executive Resorts.
Okay.
They did everything right. They set up systems to collect reviews from all over the world, but they hit a wall immediately.
What happened?
They realized that, 30, sometimes 40% of their reviews were totally inaccessible. They were just hiding in Spanish and French. It's this paradox of modern business, right? You finally get global reach, but your actual understanding of your customer, it's still completely local. It's biased to just one language.
Which puts you at a huge disadvantage. I mean, you think you have a complete picture of customer satisfaction, but you're only listening to half the room.
It's like trying to build a new building with only half the blueprints.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty clear. We're going to unpack the real cost of this linguistic gap.
Right.
Then we'll introduce the scalable tech solution that's changing how companies handle this. And finally, and this is the really important part, we're going to talk about the guardrails, how to use this powerful AI responsibly.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's start with the pain. When you can't process all this multilingual data, what is the business actually losing? It sounds like it's more than just a reporting problem.
Oh, it's an operational and an analytical crisis. The sources call it the high cost of lost in translation. And it impacts everything, from your day-to-day operations to your big picture strategy.
So what's the first one?
The first consequence is just operational blindness. The material calls it missed insights.
Okay, so give me a concrete example. What kind of insight gets missed just because it's in, say, French?
Think about the little things, the day-to-day stuff. A guest at a hotel in Paris leaves a really detailed review in French. They mention that the air conditioner in their room is leaking.
Right, an urgent maintenance issue.
A very urgent one. But if that critical suggestion gets ignored because the automated analysis just skipped over the French text, that problem just continues.
And it costs you money, it costs you time, and you get more bad reviews from the next guest in that room.
Exactly. The data is right there, but it's basically invisible to the people who need to act on it.
So the problem isn't just one bad review, it's systemic. If you have, I don't know, a dozen people in Madrid complaining about slow Wi-Fi, but all those reviews are in Spanish and they're never grouped together, then the IT department never sees it as a high priority problem to fix.
And that leads directly to the second impact.
A poor customer experience.
It does. That failure to, synthesize the feedback creates this endless loop of unresolved problems. If those Wi-Fi complaints happen over 6 months, that is 6 months of guests having a terrible experience.
And management is totally blind to it because their main dashboard, which runs on English text, looks fine.
It looks fine. Meanwhile, your brand reputation in that region is tanking.
And this has to break things on a much deeper level. For the data science teams, you can't trust their work if they're using partial data.
That is the third and honestly the most insidious cost. Incomplete analysis. I mean, think about it. If you're building these really sophisticated models,
Sentiment analysis, topic clustering.
all of it, and your data set is missing 40% of the non-English data, your models are inherently biased.
They're only trained on what the English-speaking customers care about?
Exactly. Your whole analytical framework isn't just a little bit flawed. It's got these massive blind spots. You might think your global customers care most about, say, pillow quality.
But in reality, half your customer base is screaming about broken air conditioners and slow internet.
And you're making huge strategic decisions based on that flawed data.
The goal here, then, is not just to translate words. It's about unifying the insight, taking all that input, French, Spanish, whatever, and turning it into something clean and actionable.
Right. So a review that says, La habitación necesita una renovación becomes a simple unified insight. The room needs urgent improvements.
We need a tool that can do that at a massive scale.
Precisely. And that's where we move from the pain point to the power of the solution. Historically, doing this meant a huge, complicated process.
Right. You had to move your data out of your secure platform, send it to some external translation API.
Which was slow, expensive, and a total nightmare for data security.
But the sources we're looking at highlight this major shift. away from that, toward an integrated method. This is where tools like Snowflake Cortex come in, right?
Yes. The fundamental change in architecture is, well, it's revolutionary for anyone dealing with these huge global data sets.
What makes it so different?
The revolution is really twofold: simplicity and efficiency. The core solution is that you can leverage these large language models inside your data platform.
Using a simple function like snowflake.cortex.translate.
Exactly. And that solves the efficiency problem and the data security problem all at once.
Okay, let's talk about efficiency. Why is it so much faster and cheaper to do it inside the platform, especially when you're talking about millions of reviews?
Well, just think about the logistics. Using an external API, you have to extract the data, send it over the internet, wait for some third party to process it, and then pull the results back in.
All that adds time and cost.
A significant amount of time and cost. But when you use an integrated function like Cortex, you're bringing the AI's processing power to the data right where it lives. There's no network movement. It just happens at scale with much lower latency.
So for anyone listening who's in charge of data governance, the key feature isn't just the speed, it's that the data never leaves your secure, controlled environment.
Absolutely. That is a massive win for security and compliance teams. The data stays put.
And the actual implementation is surprisingly simple.
Yeah.
You said that function snowflake.cortex.translate only needs 3 inputs.
Just 3. So first, you give it the text, which is just the column with the review you want to translate.
Okay.
Second, you tell it the from language, so you'd use a code like S for Spanish.
Okay.
And third, the to language, which in this case is N for English.
And you just run it as a SQL query.
You literally run a query and get a new translated column back. It's built for that kind of efficiency.
We have some great examples in the sources. You feed it a French sentence like Le petit déjeuner était délicieux et le personnel était très sympathique.
And you immediately get back clean English. The breakfast was delicious and the staff were very friendly.
And that's just one sentence. The real power is in the workflow.
Right. You query your whole review database, you filter for all the Spanish reviews, and in that same query, you apply the translate function.
So that earlier example, La habitación necesita una renovación. Los muebles son viejos.
Is instantly turned into a natural, accurate translation. The room needs a renovation, the furniture is old, and now that insight is searchable, it's quantifiable, it's actionable.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
We've established this tool is incredibly powerful. You can unify global data almost instantly. But, and the source material is very clear about this, it is not magic.
This is the critical part. We have to remember we're using an AI. And while it's fantastic with grammar and vocabulary, it can really struggle with context, with cultural nuance.
So there's a professional's note on this.
There is. The core warning is, grammatically correct does not always mean contextually accurate.
That distinction is everything. The AI will give you a perfect sentence.
A beautiful sentence.
But it might be the wrong meaning. So how does that lack of accuracy hurt all the analytics we just built?
It can completely poison your models. Let's take the nuance example from the sources. A customer writes a review, trying to say they were thrilled. The original intent is something like, treated like a king.
Okay, very positive.
Very positive. But the AI, trying to be as neutral and technically correct as possible, might translate that as, like, royalty.
Which is technically correct, so what's the problem?
The problem is in the analysis. In hospitality, we're classifying reviews into themes, right? Service quality, luxury, staff friendliness. Treated like a king conveys personal care, a VIP feeling. It would score very high on a sentiment model.
Right.
Like, royalty is much more neutral. It's descriptive. It might get a lower sentiment score. Or worse, it might get misclassified under a theme like facilities instead of service.
So a tiny shift in wording creates a huge analytical error.
Exactly. And it gets even worse with idioms.
Oh, yeah.
Idioms are phrases where the meaning has nothing to do with the literal words. If a Spanish idiom means I was delighted, but the AI translates it word for word into something like, I walked on air.
You're left with a nonsensical phrase that just confuses your entire model.
It'd have to interpret the cultural intent, not just translate the words.
And the person using the tool probably doesn't speak the original language, so they have no idea this nuance was lost. They just see the English output and trust it.
That's the vulnerability. And it brings up the big question. How do we use the scale of AI, which gets, say, 95% of it right, without letting that other 5% corrupt our whole strategy?
Yeah.
You can't manually check millions of translations.
So we need guardrails. We need a system. The sources propose building a formal quality assurance layer right into the workflow.
Absolutely. The answer isn't to avoid the tool. It's to build a smart workflow around the tool.
And the goal of this QA strategy is to automatically flag the high-risk translations for a quick human review.
Exactly. You let the AI handle the massive volume, and you focus your limited human time only where it's needed most, where the probability of an error is highest.
Okay, let's get concrete. For someone listening who needs to build this pipeline, what are the practical criteria that should automatically trigger a human review?
The first one is the most intuitive. A low sentiment score.
Okay.
If a translated review has an overall rating below certain threshold, say 2 or 3 stars, you automatically flag it.
And why is that?
Because when customers are angry, their language is more emotional, it's more complex, they use slang. That's exactly where translation nuance is most likely to fail.
And the cost of misinterpreting a serious complaint is huge.
It's the highest. So high risk, mandatory human check. The second flag is keyword triggers.
So you create a list of important words.
Yes, a list of words that are an immediate concern. Things like safety, emergency, unclean, maybe illegal. If the English output has any of those words, it gets flagged. Period. Doesn't matter what the star rating is.
You just can't risk a critical safety issue slipping through because the translation was a little bit awkward.
Never. And the final trigger is a bit different. It addresses the data pipeline itself, not just the language.
How so?
It's called a length anomaly. You flag any translation that is way shorter or way longer than the original text.
Ah, I see. So if you have a 300-character review that gets translated into, like, 5 characters.
Something is wrong. It could mean the data got cut off during ingestion, or maybe there was a character encoding error that fed the AI garbage. A length mismatch is a huge red flag that the data itself might be compromised.
So by building this framework, low sentiment score, keyword triggers, and length anomaly, you're basically creating a safety net.
A very effective one.
You're making sure that all this global insight that was locked away is now accessible and, critically, that the analysis you do on it is both efficient and trustworthy.
That's the goal.
So what does this all mean?
It means that the era of treating multilingual data like a roadblock is it's over. You now have the framework to not only scale up your translation, but to do it with the right human-centric guardrails in place.
So it's about finding the right balance. It's all about that balance. You maximize the AI's automation for the volume, but you deploy that critical human expertise only where the risk of losing context is highest. That's how you do global data management effectively and responsibly.
That balance between scale and critical oversight really is the whole game. And to leave everyone with a final thought to consider, we've talked about relying on specific keyword triggers for QA words like safety or emergency, but how might subtle cultural differences in how people express urgent concern, maybe especially in non-Western cultures, affect whether a review even gets flagged? Could a critical signal slip through the net because the keywords we chose are just too English-centric? Something to think about as you fine-tune your own global data strategy.